And YouTubers and my friends from Facebook. I'm starting on Innocence Travels, chapter 23, and the title is Miss Lily and Her Fits. That evening, I waited on the porch to see how long Master would be gone and how it was when he returned. I had Jesse and Aaron out on the porch with me, and we were talking about freedom and the other masters around that bend. When Master returned and they saw us out on the porch, they would think that we were just relaxing and readying ourselves for the next day of work. This time, the moon had showed itself when Master's carriage pulled into the front of the big house. I could hear what sounded like angry voices coming from inside the carriage. Then I saw Samuel help Master down from the carriage and turn in our direction and headed for the barn. Where was Miss Lily? I had a feeling that something had gone bad. Samuel arrived at the barn and told Odie to take care of the carriage. Samuel normally would come inside and go to his private stock, but not this time. Yeah, I knew then something was wrong. Tomorrow was a work day and we would be going out early. This was a good time to look and listen and watch all the people from Master's house. I waited for Thomas to come over to the barn. Maybe he knew what was going on. He showed up and had a scared look on his face. He was trembling badly. Yeah, Odie and I probably did not need to hear what was happening. Thomas came inside the barn, and I could not stand the suspense. Was it something to do with us? What about our plans? Were they to be put on hold? I just had to ask. Thomas told us that Samuel had told Master that we were all accounted for and did not have it in us to run. Run? Thomas told us that a slave man had helped Miss Lily off the carriage and accidentally touched her back and her bottom. She screamed, and that is when all the yelling began. He said that the slave had let go of Miss Lily and she hit the ground hard. The man ran behind the main warehouse building and disappeared somewhere in the woods. Miss Lily had been taken to the doctor's place and was to stay over until the next day. Meanwhile, all the townsfolk were getting their guns, knives, and dogs ready for the hunt. Thomas said that none of us tomorrow should even look the way of Samuel or any of Master's people. He also heard Master tell Samuel to get his hunting dogs fed and ready. I had never seen so much running around and screaming before. Kill that nigger. I'm going to kill that nigger dead. This brought chills all over my body. We had heard tell that if they could not catch the runaway, then they would just get and hang one of the slaves that looked like the one that escaped. I thought in my mind that I hope he didn't look like me or any of us and that he would be caught. I felt bad for feeling that way, but it just came into my head. Him or me? Me. Thomas told me and Odie that all the plantation owners would be involved in the search for the runaway. They each would have their dogs and the hanging, even men with them. The people in the town would get involved as well. I knew we had to get to moving, and I hoped that we would be smarter than all of them, the runaway and Master included. Samuel came over to the barn and went straight in. We knew he was getting his medicine. We could hear the rattling coming from the barn and Samuel yelling, "Yay, we got us one good one." At first, I didn't know what that meant, but soon figured out as Samuel went back past the big house and to his house. He meant that this would be a fun hunt for him, and he could not wait until they caught their runaway. They were going to have fun with him before they hung him on a tree. I was so angry and so scared that my body was quaking. Odie and Thomas had to grab hold of me to calm me down. I looked over at the big house and saw Joseph. He was holding on to four dogs that were making a sound that alone it would make your skin curl. He took them to the back of the house and Sarah came out with a pan. She handed it to Joseph and he sat down by the back door. Samuel came out of his house and went again to the barn. This time he came out with the two horses that pulled the carriage. He had put saddles on both and led them to the front of the big house. Master came out on the porch and was wearing some white clothing and had two guns in his hand. He handed one to Samuel and put the other one in the saddle. Then I saw Massa pull a large, heavy-looking rope from one of the bags on the porch. This to me was a sign of pure hatred for my people and evil for theirs. I had to go back inside the barn. Odie knew how I felt about evil men, long sticks, and ropes. Thomas had gone up to the house to see if Massa needed anything else and then returned. He looked pale. The first time that I had seen him afraid, he came to us and said, I fear for the boy. He better run like there's no tomorrow. Massa was a big man in the town, and his place was one of the largest plantations around. They were not going to let this nigger get away, Thomas said. I asked, how long were they going to go after the runaway? And Thomas said, until they knew the boy had got away clean. It was getting dark, and the clouds looked heavy with the blackness around them. I was thinking it would be a perfect time to run if we knew which way the hunt was going. Thomas said if it was him, he would run up above the town through the backland, and he heard Samuel talking about. I asked which way was the backland. Thomas pointed to the left side of the big house. That was going away from our plan. Odie gave me that look when he would get angry and jumpy. We thought about it. We had the spices, we had the map, and we had running fever. This would be a perfect time to go. Even Master did not have enough men to run in both ways. I looked at the clouds again. It surely looked like rain. Maybe the angels were looking out for us after all. It was time to act. The timing was perfect, but I had one stop to make. I was going to tell Mama and the boys that Thomas, Odie, and I would be up in the barn all night. Mama nodded and gave Aaron that you are not going. Look. He looked at me as if he knew what I was about to do, but hid it from Mama and Jesse. I was going to miss them. They were my newfound family. I just had to try and go back to my homeland. I had to try. If I was caught, I knew what would happen, but I didn't care. They were going to have to catch us. Dying was no longer at the front. Running and running was my only focus now. Mama looked at me with a sad look and came over and gave me a heavy embrace. She whispered in my ear, please be safe. She knew all along what Odie and I, along with Thomas, were doing in the barn. She had told me when I first got to this place, don't try and run without a plan. The ones that had ran from this place were caught quickly because they had no plan. They had brought back the two runaways and made every one of us come out to see their punishment. Mama said that they did some terrible and gruesome things. They cut off one of the runaway's legs and then cut off his arms. Then they let the dogs loose. The dogs ate the runaway and what was left. Sammy threw it in the pile of wood and set it on fire. Master made us to look at them. He told us we better not turn away. What did they do to the other runaway was even worse. They tied him down on a log, and one of the other men took a large rock and smashed it down on the poor boy's legs and feet. They went all the way up until they got to his stomach. They made him whole, open his mouth, and then poured cold oil down in him. They took a knife and started to cut off the runaway's feet one at a time. The poor boy was yelling so loud that he probably could be heard more than 10 miles away. And when they finished cutting off his feet, they took him and laid him on his stomach and poured more oil on him. Then they took a piece of wood and put it in the fire. We were all crying and moaning and hurting because we could not let out the anger and hatred that was on our insides. They poured more oil on his stomach and started to light the boy's feet that were in the pile of body parts. We could tell that he felt the burning, and then he looked over at us, and the tears were running down his face. The fire caught all the other parts, and when it had reached his neck, they took the piece of wood and stuck it in his mouth. We watched as the boy's eyes popped out of his head. They let him burn all that day and night. All remained were ashes. Even the bones were ash. Master came over to Aaron and two other young boys and grabbed one by the throat and said, "Just try and run, you nigga, waste of shit. Please try so I can have some more fun." We were all shaking like we were out in the cold snow with no clothes on our bodies. He then told us that we had to make up the work for those runaways. I was crying so hard when she had first told me this. I knew that the risk, but even the story would not make me give up and give in to Massa. He now had a fight on his hands, a fight to the death. Thank you.